Hello students. So today under friction chapter based on exercise question we will going to solve some of the questions. So let us consider the first question. 4 children were asked to arrange forces due to rolling, static and sliding frictions in a decreasing order. Decreasing order means first we have to know which is the higher order, then the lower order, isn't it? In the decreasing order means from highest order to the lowest order we have to arrange it. So from highest order to lowest order means force of friction here. Here three are there. One is static friction is there. Another one is sliding friction. Another one we are having is rolling friction. Now first we have to know which is having the highest friction. Okay. So you know static friction will be having the higher friction, isn't it? Why static friction is having higher friction means the force of friction in the case of static friction is more because the interlocking between any two surfaces in the case of static friction is more compared to sliding friction, and in the case of sliding friction the interlocking is more compared to the rolling friction. So which is having the highest force of friction? Static friction is having, and next compared to rolling friction, sliding friction is having more force of friction. So that is why what is the answer for this one? The answer for this one is option C. So static friction is having highest compared to sliding friction. Sliding friction is having higher compared to rolling friction. So decreasing order means from the highest to the lowest, what is the order here? Similarly, similar to this question, instead of decreasing order, they have given you the increasing order. Increasing order means from the smallest force of friction to the highest force of friction. So which is having the smallest force of friction under static, sliding and rolling? As rolling friction is having the smallest one compared to sliding one, and sliding friction is having lowest one compared to the static friction. If they have given increasing order means which is the option you are going to choose? You are going to choose this option, that is option B, that is rolling friction, sliding friction and as well as static friction. Okay, in this question may be asked in two ways also. One, they can give you decreasing order, another they can give you the increasing order. Second question, Iqbal has to push a lighter box and Seema has to push similar heavier box on the same floor. Okay. For example, Iqbal want to push a same object which is lighter one compared to another one Seema which is having the heavier box. On the same floor they have to consider. Who will have to apply larger force and why? Okay, both Iqbal and Seema having the same boxes or same on the same floor, but Iqbal having this lighter box compared to the Seema, and who has to apply more force and why he has to apply. To understand this, first point what we have to write, that is the important point. So due to interlocking of irregularities between two surfaces in contact arises due to the or causes the force of friction here. So you know this box and the ground will be having in contact, and any of the box or any of the object if you have considered, there will be irregularities will be there in the two surfaces. If they are in contact with each other, there will be some irregularities will be present on the two surfaces. The interlocking, interlocking in one of the substance. For example, in a rough surface, you are seeing interlocking is more compared to the smooth surface. So now when the interlocking, due to interlocking of irregularities of the two surfaces in contact, force of friction arises. Now let us consider about heavier object and lighter object. In the case of heavier object, interlocking is more. So interlocking is more in heavier object. That is the second point you want to write. Okay, interlocking is more in the case of heavier object compared to the lighter object. Okay, so why interlocking is more in heavier object? Because heavier object is pressed harder. That means the contact between the heavier object and the surface is very strong. Okay, so what I can write the point is interlocking is more in case of heavier object. Why? Because means this heavier object is pressed harder, or the surface between heavier object and the ground is very strong, so that if it is very strong, both are very tightly they are there, means in that case what will be the interlocking between them? The interlocking between this rough surface and the ground will be very attached. So we have to overcome this very strong force of friction, we have to apply more force on the heavier object. So what is the answer for this question is to overcome the force of friction in a heavier object, we want to apply more force. We means who want to apply more force here? Seema want to apply more force to push the heavier object, because heavier object is interlocking in case of heavier object is more, because the heavier object will be very closely attached or very strongly attached to the ground. So that is why we have to apply more force, or Seema wants to apply more force compared to the Iqbal. So next question is, give examples to show that friction is both friend and foe. So friend and foe means, friend means it has having the advantage, foe means it is having the disadvantage also. So first let me write what are the advantage of friction. So what is the advantage of friction? So best example is this one, what I am writing on the paper. So we are able to write, isn't it? What I am writing, we are able to write because the friction between the tip of the pen and the paper. Here the paper is there and the tip of the pen. There will be a friction between the tip of the pen and as well as paper. Paper is applying opposing force to the what I am writing, isn't it? Because, so see here, what I am writing, for my writing, the paper is applying opposite force to that. Because of that, I can able to write. We are able to write because there will be a friction between tip of the pen and as well as paper. Okay, between paper and pen there will be a friction, due to which we are able to write. This is the major advantage of the friction. You can give many examples. We are able to walk because there will be a friction between our foot as well as the ground. So that is the one advantage. Next, disadvantage. What is the disadvantage of this friction? Friction will cause heat, isn't it? Or friction produces heat, due to which? Due to the interlocking, or due to the, so friction produces heat in between the two, any of the different parts of the machine. This can damage the machine, isn't it? If there is two friction, for example, if between two machines there will be a friction is produced, due to which heat has been produced, means then different parts of the machines can be damaged due to the friction. Okay, this is about what are the examples to show that friction is having both advantage as well as the disadvantage. So next, and the very important question it is, explain why sliding friction is less than the static friction. So to understand that, let us revise what we have known about sliding and static friction. You know, interlocking between static means the object will be in rest position. This is a box if you are considered, and a ground means the object is static, means it is kept at rest position. In that cases, the interlocking between the ground as well as surface of the object is very strong. That is, there we have to apply more force to overcome the static friction. While in the case of sliding friction, the object is moving. Friction arises when an object is moving is called the sliding friction. When an object is moving, the contact between the object and the ground is very less, or I can say the time given in sliding is for the interlocking is very slow, isn't it? Very small will be there, the interlocking between the or the time for the interlocking between this object and the ground is very less. So that is why interlocking is not very strong compared to the static. Here it will be in rest position, so both will be in a contact with each other in a very strong one. But in the case of sliding means the time for them to interlock, it's very less, hence interlocking is very less compared to the static friction. So what is the first point we have to write is interlocking in the case of interlocking in sliding friction is less compared to the static friction. That is the first point you have to write. Next, we have to write the force required to overcome this interlocking. That is, force to overcome this static friction has to apply more force compared to the sliding friction. Force is more in static friction. If we have to apply more force means, so that is why we want to apply more force, because the interlocking in the case of static friction is more. So hence we are replacing, or we are saying it as sliding friction is less compared to the static friction. So next, let us take some of the fill in the blanks which are given in your textbook. So friction opposes the dash between the surfaces in contact with each other. So what is this friction? So for example, you are moving a ball is moving here, so friction is applying in this direction, isn't it? Friction, ball is moving on the ground, ball is moving in this direction, and friction is applying opposite to the what? To the motion, or the motion of between the surfaces in contact with each other. So frictional force will be applying opposite to the motion of an object between the two surfaces in contact with each other. So whenever this ball and the ground will be in contact with each other, so due to that, this is the answer here. Next, second question, friction depends on dash of the surfaces. So friction depends on whether the surface is smooth surface or whether the surface is rough surface, isn't it? There will be a difference in friction when it depends upon the nature of the nature of the surface. Nature means whether it is rough surface or whether it is smooth surface. Next, third one, friction produces. So we have discussed what are the disadvantages of friction. So friction produces heat. So that is the disadvantage of the friction. So next, sprinkling of powder on the carom board dash friction. So if you have not sprinkled the powder on the carom board, if you want to play that, you are not able to hold this. So what it be? Why? Because the surface that is carom, that is board, as well as the striker or any of the pawn, if you are considered in a carom board, there will be a force, or the surface is very rough. So that means if the surface is very rough means the friction is more. If the friction is more means that opposing friction for the moment of the striker is very more. So that is why sprinkling of a powder make the carom board smoother. The board will become smoother. So what it becomes, it reduces the friction. So when the friction is more in the case, when you sprinkle a powder on that, it reduces the friction. Next, last one, sliding friction is dash than the static friction. Whether it is more or the less. Yes, we know sliding friction is lesser than the static friction. Okay, so these are the some of the questions which are there in your notes and as well as given in the textbook. So I hope everyone have understood this, so that you are able to solve the questions which I'll give on your worksheet. So if any doubts is there means we will discuss in a live session. Thank you.